moral, because what might be moral to you might not be moral to me. But looking what the law said is that every human being and every Kenyan has a right to protect their life. So that's why we felt as social movement and as a as a person that has also a constituency within the grassroots movement, we organized to condemn that we don't want to see young women, especially university young women, being used as a collateral damage when it comes to high profile politicians when they are killed or when there's a lot of issues, they use it against women. I'm yet to be corrected. I've not seen any young man from university being used as a collateral damage. Maybe they are there, I cannot say they're not there. But the whole thing of criminalizing women in university, I was like, this is not okay. And that also is violence against women. The fact to see women being killed and universities, most of their university students. We saw what happened to the lady, was it from Moi University when she was killed? And then people just justify and dehumanize her and not holding accountable the guy that killed her. So as much as we are all in campuses, also for me as a person being in human rights space and also being in the board of Amnesty and other boards and other spaces, my politics are very intentional that everybody and also like university leadership has to be strong, especially now, because where we are going in terms of protecting our own constitution that is very progressive. I'm not convincing anybody to be anti-BPI, but for me personally, I'm anti-BPI because I feel the constitution is very progressive and we need to put more life into it. We need to breathe more life because most of us can see the results of devolution where we have seen development in areas that there are not development. And if also like the areas that are more interested is about the gender politics around it. If you want women to have power, we need to put women in National Assembly and give them budgets. We cannot put women into Senate where there's no budget. Then they can use it against us as women, the same way they use it against us in terms of women reps. Because women reps are there, they hold the constituency, but majority of them don't have enough budgets to control the county. While MPs, they have more than, I think, 100 million to control a constituency, but women rep, they get even less than that to control a county. So my politics in this is in terms of how are we as students in different universities also holding the student leadership to hold account to this. The kind of violence that has been happening to female students in campuses, we're speaking about it. I'll be happy to see even Strathmore being in the forefront, Daystar, public university, because I feel also there's a bit of disconnect, but you can make it better collectively to hold our government accountable. And I'll talk on this being that someone that I feel, maybe it's out of topic, but I feel it's also political and things that most students are going through. Yes, there's COVID. We say people should study, should do e-learning. But how many students are privileged to do e-learning? In terms of internet, in terms of space, and in terms of concentration, and in terms of the Zooms, and some of the calls you can imagine in terms of access to class. Some lecturers have put calls in certain numbers that if you get a bit late, either you have had challenges with internet or electricity. Because we realize that in this country, most places don't have electricity. But our access to education has been also against us. How do we collectively as students and as student leaders work in collaboration and partnership to hold the government accountable when it comes to this? Because you can imagine it's COVID, people have been hit economically, you have to pay school fees. But at the same time, how accessible is it for all of us? So my call is that even as Amnesty, we're trying to push so hard, at least to center in this voice of student leaders and students who are also activists, which I encourage most of you to be activists so that you're able to work together to hold institution and government accountable, but in a manner whereby education is accessible for all. I know now we are going to festive season. There's a lot of drugs most people are using. But my question will be, because I don't like respectability politics, would be like, how safe are you? How safe are you in terms of, even if you go into peer pressure or anything, how safe are you in terms of looking at where we are going? I don't use the word we are lucky or we are privileged in school, because when it comes to education, it needs to be accessible to every child in Kenya or everybody in Kenya. But as we know, in terms of the system doesn't work in favor of us. But how are you using our accessibility to make impact into this country, into this nation, beyond just professionalism? And that's also my challenge will be, how are we also like joining movements as Amnesty, which are international movements, or comrades like myself who are working to grassroots community, to be able to understand. It doesn't matter even if you're a middle class or if you're a baby or the way you call it in Ghetto Bombay, but how do we work together to ensure like we fight for human rights and social justice into this country? How do we ensure like our female comrades and our female students are safer? And this one I'll challenge our male comrades and students. The thing as a feminist I talk is a fight for equality, is a fight for women to be respected and girls. Are you calling out also like lecturers or people who are violent to female students? Because also we cannot burden the female students to hold the men accountable. But if you guys are also like seeing violent lecturers who are taking advantage of our comrades who are women like myself, how are you calling them out? How are you holding them into account? So that we ensure like there's an enabling space for all of us to operate and coexist and support each other.
Very
I can
much
talk and
indeed,
talk.
Rachel.
Yeah, I can
Very
talk
much
and
indeed.
talk. So I hope my time is not over. It's over.
Yeah,
So maybe
no
leaving you
problem.
guys to ask me questions.
Yeah, actually, we have a bit some of changes, and we would like to go to the second part of the session. It's quite engaging. Sorry to cut you short, Rachel. And it's my appeal as well for you to hold on a bit so that we can watch the following session. It's going to be a very interesting debate. And kindly allow us to go to the second part, whereby we'll have the motion explained by Maria Gitao, so that we can now start the debate. Hold on, Rachel. We would like your feedback from the debate as well. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll try, but also because the way I say, like, it's not rude, but if I'm not able to attend full out of it, feel free to reach out to me on my social media, Rachel Mekali, or Instagram or Twitter, Rachel Mekali. Because you know me nakageto, so mambo internet ni blanda na electricity, but I'll try my level best to be in and listen and contribute.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thank you so much, Maria. That is noted. We'll post your social media handles on the chat. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you so much. Also, I'd just like to say a big thank you to the Strathmore Debate Society and those who volunteered to be with us. So one of the things that Rachel has just talked a lot about is the issue of accountability. Yeah. And so the social issues we've been talking about, from drugs and substance abuse to sexual violence to mental health, one thing we see a lot of is the blame game, yeah? And people blame especially alcohol. So people will say, why were you under the influence, yeah? Your parents or older generations will say, you know, it's those things you drink that are causing you to have mental health issues, yeah? So we felt one of the most appropriate motions we will have today, and throughout the debate, we'd like to hear your input, is on the topic of alcohol consumption. So the motion we're going to debate today is that this House prefers a world without alcohol. For those of you who do not understand how debates go, this debate will be a two-bench debate. So we'll have people who propose, who agree that this world that we are debating prefers a world without alcohol. The other side will say we prefer a world with alcohol. And so both sides will give their points, and then we will then have a breakout session and see what you guys think, who you guys agree with. So keep tabs of what all the speakers say. So yeah, without further ado, I will welcome our debaters for today. And so our first debater will be Masharia Njuguna. So Masharia will be proposing this motion. On his side will be Fadhili, and then in opposition, we will have Masharia Mukono and Mweni. Each will speak for 5 minutes, and then we will lead on to our breakout session. So I hope you enjoy.
Sorry,
Masharia, the floor is yours.
Before I start, am I allowed to take POIs? Because I want to take Masharia Mukono's POI.
Yes, you are. So long as you stay within your time frame, feel free.
Okay,
You
just
can
give
take
me.
POIs from the moment you start. Also, feel free to switch on your video. We would like to
Yeah,
see
I'm
who is
doing that.
talking.
I'm doing that. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Ron, can you see the lights? Perfect. Okay. All right. Just switch on this video. Can you all see me? Am I clear?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
All right. I got specs. All right. So
They look very cool.
thank you. All right. So I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1, go. It's unfortunate that as a certified teetotaler, I have to tell you why we prefer a world without alcohol. What you must understand about this debate is that we're not telling you specifically that alcohol is extremely bad. What we are saying is supposed to compare to you what two worlds look like. The first world has alcohol as something that people use either for pain alleviation or boosting social interactions, or we have another world where alcohol does not exist. What we are going to be telling you from our side is that alcohol in and of itself has irreversible harms that cannot be mitigated, and therefore we prefer a world where we do not use alcohol. Firstly, what you must understand is that we must do a comparative analysis. Firstly, alcohol has irreparable harms to the physical body. These are things that specifically will catch you both long-term and short-term. In the short term, what you see from alcohol is withdrawal symptoms such as headaches, hangovers, and all these other physical affections or things that affect you that come after you consume large amounts of alcohol. On a long-term basis, what we get from alcohol is more long-term impacts, things like liver cirrhosis, things that tend to always affect you in future. These harms, in as much as could be mitigated, are irreparable. At a point where you overconsume alcohol, most of these harms are not things that you can be able to shy away from. Therefore, we prefer a world where individuals do not have to get access to all these harms without necessarily having something that they could do instead. Alcohol also has emotional and mental impacts on individuals that always tend to affect them later on in life. On emotional, it always affects or creates mood swings, it creates personality changes. For example, you see when someone drinks alcohol, they sometimes might become something you might not expect. We think these things on the mental impact, we think alcohol also causes things like depression, especially when you're trying to withdraw or when you don't consume. And also it causes things like addiction. All these effects are things that we think are some things that we can necessarily avoid when we have a world that doesn't have alcohol. I know all that was simplistic. So let's now go to the debate. What is then what we must understand is the principal justification for why we prefer a world without alcohol. Firstly, what you need to understand is that alcohol dilutes the value of human autonomy. What is human autonomy? Human autonomy is the ability of an individual to be able to make decisions for themselves, whether or not they want to take specific actions. What alcohol does is remove the chemical balances that almost create things like inhibitions or stop you from doing certain things, therefore reducing the amount of autonomy and control that you have over specific actions that you make. We think at a point where you understand your autonomy is diluted, what then does is create two specific impacts. Firstly, it reduces the accountability of individuals to be able to own up or be held responsible for their crimes. As the proverb speaker once said, many times when things like sexual harassment happens, what you tend to get as a defense for these individuals is the idea that I was drunk, therefore I was not in control. We think this reduction of accountability is something that we don't value when individuals can be able to cop out of the mistakes they made just because they can be able to use the defense that they were necessarily taking alcohol. We think that world is just specifically harmful. In our world where there is no alcohol, or even if we were to expand the debate to say drugs in general, we think individuals don't have the cop out of saying, oh, I was drunk or I was under the influence of whatever, therefore it reduced my autonomy, therefore it was not me who did it, as a defense for necessarily irreparable or extremely harmful behavior. Things like rape, violence, and all these things, we think they are perpetuated when people consume these drugs. Secondly, it reduces the ability of an individual to self-determine. At a point where you understand this thing has addictive properties that therefore become something that you become very extremely reliant on and your body cannot function without. That then reduces the amount of determination you have, for example, as to whether or not you'll go to work or you'll go drink, especially for people who then end up becoming addicts. The reduction in self-determination by removal of inhibitions and creating addictions therefore limits the ability of individuals to self-actualize. For you realize a lot of people's potentials are largely diluted by the fact that they necessarily became addicts of these drugs and therefore they could not be able to find any other ways of self-determining. The drugs took over, they lost all control of themselves. But before I continue, Mashara, do you have anything? All right, so the opposition has nothing. Let's continue. So now let's go into the weighing of the issues and the comparative benefits and harms that exist. While we do then engage, what is our worst case scenario? What does alcohol give individuals, and why do we think we still prefer a world without alcohol, even with all these benefits? The first thing alcohol does is that it gives people the ability to interact socially. For example, it's a tool like for people who drink socially, just to be able to interact with friends and all these things. Firstly, what you must understand here is that there are other alternatives that exist for individuals to still create these meaningful social interactions, even without the existence of alcohol. We see this especially when you realize some of your closest bonds are those that are created without the existence of alcohol. Look at family, look at meaningful relationships, either with your wives or whatever it is you will end up in future. Your most meaningful relationships come from a relationship that doesn't involve alcohol. Therefore, if opposition says things like people need time to socially interact, we still prefer a world without alcohol because we create more meaningful social interactions when it's not premised on addictive properties that necessarily could harm you short-term and long-term. Second thing people will say is that alcohol is something that can be able to get you out of maybe pain alleviation. Maybe it's a stress reliever for people who are going through a lot in life. Again, I tell you that there are other alternatives that could exist for those individuals to be able to find pain alleviation or just get another high of some sort for them to be able to just get out of those situations that don't involve drugs or alcohol. You can have psychology. You think they have a psychologist and counselors you can go talk to, meaningful interactions with your friends, even sleep. There are many other alternatives that exist for you to be able to get pain alleviation without necessarily consuming alcohol. We think in our world, there's no way opposition will prove to you alcohol has benefits that are not necessarily worse off or outweighed by the harms that it creates. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. So we heard from our first speaker. Now we will listen to our second speaker on the opposition side, who is Masharia Mukono.
Actually, it's Mweni. Mweni will speak first.
Oh, Mweni is going first. Okay, Mweni, the virtual stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our proposition has come to tell us here and now that they prefer a world without alcohol for the following reasons. Now, I am here to tell you that we indeed do prefer a world with alcohol, and for the following reasons I'm going to outline. First off, why do we prefer a world with alcohol? We have always had it, not only as an introduction of Western concepts, Western cultures, we have also had it in our current existing traditional societies. Keeping of alcohol or having a preference for alcohol in our society, or at least having to imagine that we can live with it and have it around, is not only maintenance of culture, it is maintenance of social interactions that have been there for hundreds of years, and we should have to maintain them for hundreds of years to come. An example of alcohol that we have had so far would be Congo in the Luo community to appease the elders. Now, proposition came and told us that alcohol has, it is harmful to your health, that people will not become accountable, that there are so many negative things that come with the very consumption of alcohol. Now, I am here to tell you that when there was Congo here in our Luo, with our Luo elders, they did not abuse this Congo. What proposition did is that they came and made a blanket statement that anybody who comes and takes alcohol is just going to collapse and fall down and die and just have their livers fail. I'm here to tell you that it is not always the case in that situation. Failure to do so and failure to acknowledge alcohol as part of our culture as Africans, part of our culture as Kenyans, in our different societies, in our different communities, is nothing short of neglecting its importance as part of our traditional communities. And in a world where technology is evolving, rapidly evolving, I shall take it later. In a world where technology is rapidly evolving, we are very much capable of dissolving, let alone forgetting, our very culture. If you're going to start talking that and saying that we prefer a world without alcohol. My second point, thank you, proposition. I shall take your point of information later. My second point is that individuals who are engaging in the consumption of alcohol are rational. These are people, you have in the advertisements that alcohol is consumed by people who are of 18 years and above. These are individuals who are acting in their best interest. Proposition came in and told us that these people do not have any regards for their health, that they are going to fall down and die and just fry their livers. We're here to tell you that these people are acting in their best interest. All of us, most of us, if not all of us here are rational adults. We've all heard of people who are, you go out with good company, you're going out with friends, you take an Uber home instead of driving a car. These are already, thank you, Proposition, I shall take your point later. These are already indications that these people who are participating in alcohol consumption are indeed rational adults, rational, responsible adults who are capable of answering for their actions even when they are sober. Failure to acknowledge this from proposition means that you're living in a world where you are opposing fully rational adults in their 40s, in their 50s, telling them that they are not responsible enough to sit down and consume alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a fallacy in and of itself, and that you are oppressing people's freedom of choice. You're oppressing people's free will. You're oppressing people's ability to choose and make good decisions for themselves. Now, my third point is that, thank you, Proposition, I shall take your point later. Alcohol is a form of mental escapism. Now, Proposition came and told us that alcohol makes you emotional, it makes you reckless, it makes you irresponsible. We're here to tell you here and now that our rates of depression and anxiety are at their highest than they've ever been before, and that alcohol has served its purpose in and of itself as a tool to manifest one's desire to avoid harmful thoughts in this society. Now, you see people going out for alcohol. They don't only go out for the alcohol, they go out for to have fun with people, they go out to socialize, they go out to make friends and have a good time. Having this without having to say that we don't want this as part of our world is to say that we have less coping mechanisms as a people to deal with these mental struggles, and having less coping mechanisms is nothing short of a detrimental action to the fight against social illnesses. Thank you for that. I shall lead my floor back to the chair. I'm done.
Thank you, Moni. Beautiful speech. We will now move on to our next speaker from the proposition side, who is Fadhili. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you clearly.
Okay, just a second. We'll be starting in just a second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen of the floor, I regret to inform you that while the leader of the opposition has come and spoken to us a lot about some very interesting things, she has unfortunately failed to target the real meat of what the Prime Minister has spoken about. And she's failed to do that in 3 particular ways. Firstly, she began by justifying the existence of alcohol in the world by general appeal to tradition, by saying that somehow alcohol is such an integral part of our culture as Africans that it would be highly regrettable to get rid of. First of all, that claim is quite rests on quite spurious grounds. And even if it were the case, it rests on this idea that what it means to be African is to be dogmatically attached to previous ways of doing things, regardless of the existing harms that are here. So given the fact that our prime ministers detail all those very harms, it doesn't make sense to speak about the fact that it's a tradition, because if traditions are harmful, then it's worth getting rid of them. Secondly, if you want to talk about us trying to deny people's rational self-interest, first of all, you must recognize that this is a debate about comparative worlds. We're not trying to say that we want to impinge on people's rational autonomy. We're just speaking about how, to put it simply, we're speaking about in which particular world would people's rational self-interest actually best be served. And as our Prime Minister has spoken about, a world without alcohol, a world without this substance that has time and again proven to be a hindrance towards people actually using their rational self-interest properly, it would be better without it rather than with it. And so to talk about, and so to paint a straw man as if we are trying to impinge on that rational self-interest is completely besides the point of this debate. And lastly, the one thing I'd like to say is that given the fact that she's spoken about how alcohol has proven to be conducive in certain contexts to affability and sociability, what she neglects the fact that we've already spoken about how in the world that we propose, it would be better to socialize and be more affable without having to rely on the crutch that is alcohol. And if we're talking about tools that are best suited for mental health, instead of resorting to alcohol, there are many sorts of therapies that people can resort to. One of them being cognitive behavior therapy, realizing that you can deal with and through a situation rather than relying on alcohol or any other substances to begin with. So I'd just like to expand a bit further on what what the Prime Minister has spoken about, and it has to do with the fact that like the crux of our argument rests not on the fact that alcohol is net negative, even though we do believe that, but the crux of argument rests in the fact that even if we take into account the positives that the opposition will try to present you for alcohol, the positives do not outweigh the positives of a world without alcohol. Because first of all, as you've already spoken about, one of the things that's greatly lamentable about the existence of alcohol in our lives is the fact that people use it as a crutch for to help them engage with friends and to get general experiences. So when the opposition comes here and tells us that the fact that people already do that, alcohol should stay, it's quite lamentable and saying that the fact that people have already done it, we should continue doing it. But if anything, we should realize that it is quite lamentable that people cannot experience things to the full, cannot live life to the full without being tipsy or even blackout drunk. So we think that it would be like in a hypothetical world, a world without alcohol, the best thing that you can do is that even if there are people who are sadly heavily reliant on mind-altering substances or activities that take them away from authentically living experiences, it would be better to help them and teach them ways in which to generally engage with those experiences. And I think the best way to argue for this point is to compare this with what we have in the current world. Right now, we have tools to deal with substance abuse. But what I'm going to say is that in the current world is that we have tools to deal with substance abuse and how to deal with alcohol withdrawal symptoms and how to deal with alcoholism in general. But if you look at what will happen in our world, the only resources that we need to be devoted to are resources devoting to helping people living the experiences more properly, more authentically. So on the one hand, in the real world, we have so many hours of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, so many hours in therapy to get people who have already suffered immensely from alcohol abuse and the like. While on the other hand, in a hypothetical world, the only sort of let's say the fullest extent of psychological interventions that would be required are to help people live life to the fullest. And those things and the ways and the tools that I can run off the head are sort of, let's say, like I said, cognitive behavioral therapy, books and sessions, even maybe pick up a book or two on existentialism so as to learn how to live life truly authentically, and just learning how to engage with the people right there in front of you. Because ultimately, like the main crux of argument, just to reiterate anything there, is that the only benefit that alcohol has to its name is the idea that it can it and other mind-altering substances can add to the experiences that we have with like on our own and with other people, or even to act as a gate or as a getaway drug from us from whatever negative experiences we have. What we're basically saying is that alcohol is not uniquely or even best suited to helping us do that. And given the already negative side effects that alcohol already has, it's therefore completely viable to want to prefer a world without alcohol. And unless the opposition has any points to make in rebuttal to myself, I would like to rest my case there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fadili. I hope all of you are as engrossed in their speeches as I am. Our next speaker is Masharia Mukono. Masharia, the virtual stage is yours.
Hi, can I be heard?
Hello, yes, we can see you and hear you.
Okay, thank you. So you can ignore the correction on the word. Yeah. So that okay. 3, 2, 1. So ladies and gentlemen, the first thing we need to understand is that this motion reads that this House prefers a world without alcohol, right? So we need to understand this debate in terms of everyone that this debate is going to affect, right? And looking at what government has presented to us, right? So Macharia tells us that alcohol has irreparable harms. Fadili comes in to tell us that, you know, there are better alternatives like going to therapy and actually finding more meaningful ways to interact with people, right? But the one thing you need to understand within the entire speech and on which the entire government bench has rested upon, right, is the concept of overconsumption of alcohol, right? So their problem is not the existence of alcohol in and of itself, right? It's the fact that people are over-consuming alcohol, right? And this is why I think government is not going to win this debate, right? Because it is possible, as Moini has told you, to have cultures in which, for example, to have cultures in which alcohol was actually culturally appropriate, right? So, for example, when she tells you that, you know, society today has restricted the consumption of alcohol to adults, the fact that and that adults are mature enough to be making decisions in and of themselves without actually needing to relying on alcohol, right? Which is what Macharia, the other Macharia, was here to tell us about, right? The fact that alcohol dilutes human autonomy, right? And my counter to that is very simple, right? The thing is, right, the choice to take or to consume alcohol is a choice in and of itself, right? Is therefore a manifestation of human autonomy, right? So Macharia cannot come here to argue that alcohol in and of itself derives people of human autonomy in the choices they make after consuming alcohol, if the choice to consume alcohol in and of itself is a choice that they made freely, right? And that is something we think that government has not engaged in this debate, right? We think that, for example, the existence of the choice to consume alcohol to amounts that actually derive you of your own autonomy, right, is a choice that you take freely, right? And we think that that is a much better way to demonstrate human autonomy, to demonstrate human development, to demonstrate self-mastery, than the concept than what Macharia is telling us, that we should take away all the ills, for example, that exist in society and create this world where, you know, there is one less temptation to deal with for human beings, right? The second thing I want to point to you in this debate, right, is that Fadili and Macharia have argued as if alcohol is on the extreme spectrum of ills that exist in human society, right? We think that that's not the case. We think that alcohol can be quite a mild ill in society, right? We think that when you have moderate consumption of alcohol, which many of us engage in, right? We think that human society has continued to coexist regardless of whether or not people have consumed alcohol to extreme amounts, right? We think that those who consume alcohol to extreme amounts and cause harms such as what Macharia was saying about, you know, sexual violence are a minority in today's society, right? So we think that arguing this debate as if alcohol is on an extreme spectrum of ills that exist in society is something that we don't agree with as society, right? We think that the existence of alcohol, right, is a much better tool to demonstrate self-mastery. We think that when a human being is able to say, you know, I've had enough, or for example, when people are able to make choices like Macharia told us that he's a teetotaler, right? We think that that is a much better demonstration of self-mastery compared to a world where alcohol did not exist, and therefore Macharia's, existence as a teetotaler doesn't mean anything for society, right? We think that the fact that Macharia exists and tells us that he does not drink shows some form of self-mastery that many of us, or for example, many of us don't demonstrate. We think that many of us here, for example, possibly actually consume alcohol, and therefore many of us might look at Macharia and say, I wish I was like him, right? But we think that in a world where alcohol did not exist, then his existence as a teetotaler doesn't make sense, right? We think that it becomes a common thing. We think that it loses meaning for him to tell us that he's a teetotaler, right? And therefore we think that in a world where alcohol does not exist, right, human beings lose one more way in which they're able to demonstrate self-mastery and self-development, in which they're able to evaluate themselves in terms of human
Macharia.
autonomy and making decisions. I'll take you, Macharia.
Okay, so all the harms we give exist even if you take alcohol moderately, right? All these things, all these harms, addiction and all these things. You can't talk about free will when you concede that alcohol has addictive properties and society is largely coercive towards pushing people to consume it. You can't just say that we all make free choice. It's coerced, and these things, addictive properties, dilute the free will and the autonomy we have when we consume it.
Okay, so the key to Masharia's POI, right, is what we mean by the term addicted, right? What do you mean when you say that someone is addicted? And that's not a question, right? That's something that is actually supposed to be a factually existent fact, right? We think that, for example, the fact that I, for example, actually sometimes go out with my friends and drink, right, does not mean that I'm necessarily addicted, right? Because we think addiction is a different kind of conversation, right? When you say that someone is addicted, right, we think that that is someone who completely depends on alcohol, right? But that is not the only actor that we are going to be, that is not the only actor that this motion seeks to target, right? When you have a motion that tells you, for example, that this house prefers a world without alcohol, right? We think that moderate drinkers are actually actors in this debate, right? We think that the existence of autonomy, right? The difference between moderate drinkers and those who are addicted to alcohol is something that you must consider in this debate, right? And therefore, we don't think that you arguing, for example, that people become addicted is something that necessarily makes sense given the motion that we are given today, right? So we think that, again, the fact that people, not everyone necessarily becomes addicted to alcohol is something that you need to concede as government bench, right? And therefore, we think that it is improper for you to come and argue, for example, that everyone is addicted to alcohol. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much. I know we are debaters, and so if I left it open, we would talk the whole night. So due to demand, we will have just a summary of what proposition has come and said. For those not familiar with some of the terminologies, don't worry. Yeah, so Masharia, you can summarize in like 3 minutes. And then Ali has offered to give a summary for opposition, and we will close this debate. So please
can I
be
go
as
first?
brief as possible. Yes,
Maria.
Ali, feel free to go first.
Okay. Let me set up in 3, 2, 1. So can you guys see me clearly?
Yes, we can see and hear you very clearly.
Okay, I'm going to utilize 3 minutes of my time summarizing the case by the opposition. So in summary, the opposition seeks to understand the essence of why essentially we use alcohol, right? Opposition concedes that alcohol in and of itself in its addictive form is bad. And that addictive form is an extreme because essentially you're not essentially controlling your actions to exercise, to essentially consume alcohol, but essentially what is happening, you're over-consuming it. But then secondly, individuals recover out of overconsumption. There are aspects such as rehabilitation within the societies because societies then interrogate with the problems that these individuals face. For example, if an individual has marriage disputes in of themselves or individual poverty disputes, at the point where they overconsume alcohol, the society is able to interrogate with these problems and seek to resolve them. However, in the world where proposition live in is where they don't interrogate deep issues of themselves. So the only solution for them where individuals face existential crisis is that, one, you might even commit suicide. But at a point where alcohol provides a form of mental escapism, that one, reality is too scary for you, and you can escape at that point in time to form to a form of an aesthetic experience, then you yourself, by consuming alcohol, you can sort of one, control, reduce the intensity of the stress that you've been accumulating. But even secondly, we exist in a highly capitalistic society where we vastly majority encounter discrimination, racism, patriarchy, white supremacy. So that essentially means that at a point where all these problems decide to cloud your mind, you're not able to essentially keep them out. But even secondly, if at all, for instance, you want to solve these issues alone, you'd want to escape fast and come back and interrogate them. So propositions world doesn't essentially want individuals to essentially do that. But even secondly, they offer no alternative for individuals to escape. For the assumption is that there are moral frameworks in the society, and there is one way to act morally. If at all there is one way of acting morally, then you're going to acquire those benefits. However, as human beings, we all suffer from pain, anguish, isolation, despair, and even at times want to give up about life. But even secondly, When people think that life in of itself is absurd in nature, there is so much meaningless. What you only want to do is to sort of go into this sort of form of self-discovery. At a point where human beings want to sort of pursue self-discovery, then it is justified for them to pursue alcohol as an alternative. But even secondly, individuals have temperaments. That essentially means, if at all I think like working from 8 to 5 in itself is extremely stressful. If I can drink 2 bottles on Saturday and refresh on Sunday, it's justified insofar as individuals can control with them. Thirdly, some people don't essentially consume alcohol totality. People essentially consume cocktail. And so that at a point where individuals socialize in those aspects, and those are the alternatives where they can escape from, it is justified insofar they can regulate their behavior and regulate the manner of their actions. Now, proposition failed totally because you can never argue that at a point where human beings can exercise choice and regulation, then you can deny them the opportunity to pursue individual freedom.
Thank you, Ali. That was very beautifully summarized for the case of the opposition. Masharia, you have 3 minutes.
All right, just give me a second. I get my timer. I've really enjoyed this. I hope everyone has. Sometimes really fun to spar. Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. These debates can be summarized in one parable. Opposition is the team that stays with the 99 and leaves the 1. And proposition is the team that says we cannot leave one man behind. That is just basically the summary that we are going to have in this debate. So let me just engage the main clashes that happen in this debate. But let me first point out, we won this debate by the end of my speech because everything they said was already preempted when we spoke about social interactions and alternatives existing. Fadili further expounded on this. And I also talked about how this pain or mental elevation, you can also find other ways of doing it. And what we said is that those alternatives give you more meaningful relationships. They give you much better ways of coping with the and repeat all those problems that we had already preemptively given them to engage, which they didn't. But I'll just summarize for you using the following mechanisms. Firstly, the main question in this debate is, are human beings rational? Are human beings rational? What we tell you from proposition is that human beings cannot be trusted to be rational. If human beings were rational, we would have a world of kumbaya, peace, love, unity, vibes, all those things you want to call it. But human beings are not specifically rational actors. Most of the time, we act irrationally. And we think when it comes specifically to the question of alcohol, what we tell you is that adults are not always rational. We've seen adults who sometimes behave irrationally. You just need to watch the news. Secondly, free will is not an absolute concept, which is something that they seem to be riding on, that because human beings have free will, we must let them have free will. We think free will stops at the point where that free will then affects other people, at a point where you could consume alcohol and commit actions that harm other people or even yourselves. Sometimes governments can say, for example, you don't drink for someone below 18. Why? They have autonomy too. They have free will. Why not? Because they understand the concept that the state has a mandatory, almost power to protect you, not just from others or harming others, but also from yourself. So free will as a concept is not absolute. Thirdly, alcohol as a concept or as a good has coercive properties. The amount of advertisement that goes into alcohol, the amount of social pressure that goes into taking people to consume alcohol means that human beings, when making the decision to take alcohol, are not always making it, especially at the beginning, from a point of free will, self-exploration or discovery, as Ali wants to call it. Most of the time, it's out of coercive factors. And once they're in, then why you always go back? In as much as you think you're in control, what I asked was, the addictive properties will sometimes bring you back. And I'm not talking about absolute addiction. Addiction also has a spectrum. So at a point where you might maybe mildly addicted, you're not even addicted, you just feel like you always want it whenever you have social interactions. Those things then limit the amount of free will that you have within the specific concepts. I hope that free will rationality idea has been summarized. The second is that we must hold on to traditional values. Now, this is the funniest point of them all. You cannot say that because our forefathers took alcohol, we must take it. It's a joke. Because our forefathers practiced polygamy, child marriage, FGM, you must defend the use of all those traditional ideas, even in the society today. We think that was just a funny thing. The third thing they talked about was this idea that we're only focusing on overconsumption. We tell you as a principle, even if
only 10% of people in our world are affected by the extreme. We think we prefer a world where 10% of our world is freed from this pain. On our world, when we remove alcohol, nobody is harmed. In their world, they have alcohol, at least 10 to 20% of the population will suffer extreme harms. Our world has no extreme harms. I think you're more likely to jump off a building when you're drunk than you are when you're sober. We think our world has better ideas of self-control and escapism, and the alternatives thereof are much better. I think I've summarized this debate. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. All of you, if you could please virtually clap for our debaters. You can post on the chat what you think, which side you side with, whether you prefer a world without alcohol or a world with, and you can also give your reasons based on what's been said. So yeah, thank you to the Strathmore Debate Society and all of you debaters who have come this evening. I think it was a very eye-opening debate. Yeah, and so when you're thinking about alcohol and all the dynamics, you can think about some of the points that have been brought up. Yeah, so we are now nearing our third and last part of this session today, which will now be a sort of breakout session. Yeah, so we really want to hear from you guys. And I'll allow Jamal to come back. Jamal,
Hello.
you can come back and usher in. Maybe we can start with hearing Rachel, what she thinks about the debate, and yeah, take it from here.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to thank the debate club. That was actually, as I can quote Dalton, that was a heated debate. Amazing stuff. Thank you to all the speakers. Congratulations. That was a wonderful debate. I just want to get some few comments from Rachel. I saw her comments coming in at the chat. I'd kindly allow her to give her what was her take from the debate, and probably if she has some reactions. Rachel.
Yes, Jamal, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Like, bravo to all the speakers. It has been like a super interactive discussion, and that's what I said. It's like the sharpening contradiction. Yes, as Rachel, I drink, but in terms, like, also I have my own reservation in terms of the topic is very subjective. Like, there's a way, like, if you look in terms of a local society, let me come back to the opposers and proposers. Like, there are people like, let's look in terms of the period of COVID. There are people who are having alcohol as a coping mechanism in terms of first not for reducing stress, but also it does not mean like stress ends when you drink alcohol. Others are having it for fun, which it's okay. But if you look in terms of the people who are opposing in terms of the ills that it has brought to the community, like, for example, I'll use my personal example. Like, I'm in Madare, there's a lot of illicit brew, which I'm like, people are using it for their livelihood, but I'm like, the way it takes away people's life, I'm like, no. But in terms also, like, we are living in a society where what is moral to you might not be moral to me. So we have to be in that kind of a conversation where we understand where do we reach into a conversation that's understanding. We can coexist, but at the same time, being university students, we can't use respectability politics of discriminating the ones that who are above 18 but who drink. But at the same time, how do you reach to a conversation whereby you also drink responsibly, not drinking in a manner like you can forget yourself? Because you have seen like a lot of rape cases also happens when people are drunk, but at the same time, it's not about justifying. Like, I have to be clear and clarity on this. The oppressors also can't justify when they do oppressive acts. They use alcohol as an excuse. If you're an oppressor, you're an oppressor. So we cannot use that alcohol as an excuse. Because if now you look in terms of rape cases and rape culture, why is it like men when they rape women, they will say it's alcohol, but women, we get drunk, but we don't rape men. So it's a matter of understanding how do we coexist, and at the same time, How do we respect each other's rights, value each other, and respect each other? At the same time, we are able to understand also as a person, sometimes knowing your limits. Like if I have a 2 bottle or 1 bottle or a bottle of wine, I'm like, it's enough, but don't exceed to this level. But this one, it's a gray area. It doesn't have black and white, but it's about time now we are going to festive season. If for those who drink responsibly, but I'm not encouraging you to drink, but drink responsibly. Let's respect each other. Let's not take advantage of each other, and be sisters and brothers keeper. Because we never know, and especially now with COVID, there is a possibility maybe in January, because of also people's movements and the festive season, the cases might increase. I'm just saying it's a scenario, but I'm not like saying that's according to St. Rachel. So you have to be very, very careful so that you're able to see each other. And personally, like the way I tell Sumaya that I'll be happy to meet all of you in person so that you're able to engage. And for those who will be able to get time, you're most welcome to visit Madare and also our Center's Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defender and really understand the topic we're talking about, how it has affected a lot of livelihoods in Madare and people. Because also like you understand Madare is a quote unquote is a cash crop of illicit brew. So there is, in terms of alcohol, there's the gray area that we might agree and we might disagree. So that's my view, and I'm happy the way the discussion has been. And kudos to each one of you. You are all articulate. You're all true to your facts, and I'm happy the conversation was a will-will situation. So that's from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Allow me also to ask you a few questions. So
sure,
I just
yeah,
have,
you can go ahead.
Yeah. So the first question is about sexual assault, and what can we do, as young people, to be part of the solution, towards the social ills in our society? Probably I could take that question together and probably give us your what can we do if we fall also victim, or we see a social an injustice like sexual assault, because this is something that has been emerging as well in our very own society. And allow me to tie in with how can we engage in safe parties, because most of this take place during parties. And yeah.
I think for this, like the way I say it's a gray area. One is that for me, I'm that person who doesn't agree that when you do bad things and then you use it alcohol as an excuse. That's for me. Because both men and women we drink, including myself, like I have alcohol. I drink alcohol. But the fact is that ukijua yenyewe imekushika, I hope people understand Swahili. I'm becoming exclusive, let me know. Yenyewe ukijua imekushika, just go back home. But also it's important, like when you go to parties, also we let our friends or people we trust know which party am I going with and who am I with. Because not everybody understands the kind of politics we understand in terms of ideology and respect. So it's important to have like that like a third party or second party knowing where you are and what you're doing and who are you with, especially as a university student. Because we know on our party are. I've been to parties and I go to parties. We know to what extent it can be when we're under influence. So just be cautious. Feel free just to say like, it's about discipline. Like, or if anything happens, just take precautions. But at the same time, for those of us who go to parties, if one of our colleagues, they are high or anything, which happens to most of the cases, let's take care of them. Let's not assume that things are okay. Because we know also like not everybody in the parties have good intentions. And some of them might take advantage of most of the women who are our classmates, and at the same time also of men. So we have to be very cautious that we are sisters and brothers keeper. And then also on our individual capacity, If you have to drink, if it's a must, you have to drink, which shouldn't be like a must. Take precautions. Because we don't
Thank you.
want, when we reach January, we have a lot of issues. Because apart from pregnancy, there's HIV, AIDS, and things to do with mental health. We can't avoid. If some of you saw my show yesterday on Citizen TV at daybreak in the morning, the reality is that now as a country we're in a crisis when it comes to mental health. And we have to be cautious on how we ensure that there's an enabling environment for all of us to be able to be supported by other communities. Because not everybody has the luxury of therapists or psychiatrists or counselor. So you have to be there to assist each other and not judge. Because this is the thing I've seen being in campus. People are quick to judge and not offering solution. So if you know, as much as in terms of not being pro respectability of politics, right to information according to Kenyan Constitution, ensure like if you have information, right information. Give your classmates right information. So that when they make a choice, they're able to know if there's a consequences they need to follow and what can they take up from that consequences. But all in all, also as youth, we have to be very cautious. For some of these decisions, when you reach about certain age, they'll be like up to us. But at the same time, also should not let the respectability politics to be able to dictate how we need to live our life. If you feel on him to a party, but take party with precaution, with the restrictions. If you feel like you party, it's fine. You should not feel people will take you as mshamba or someone who's not like liberated. Whatever makes you comfortable and happy, do it. Yeah, so that's my thoughts. But also feel free to contradict or critique it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel. For the audience, our social media handle is Rachel Mikali. And at this point, I would like to welcome our Student Council President, Don Kamoya, to give his closing remarks as we wrap up today's session. Don?
Sorry to interject. But Maria, did you finish?
Yes, on my end we're done. Yeah.
Awesome.
Don, you
Don,
can go
karibu.
ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been such an amazing session. I would like to thank the debate club for doing such an amazing job. The president took the time to come as well. Juguna Masharia, thank you so much. Thank you, Maria, for all you've done. And I would like to thank everyone else who took part in this. Student council, senators, all the other students. Rachel, for sparing your time to be with us. It is truly an honor. I just can't explain it. It's an honor to have you guys here. So now that we're coming to an end of this campaign, I would like to share with you guys the vision that we as a student council had for this specific campaign. So the vision for all this is that we were aiming at protecting the Strathmore students. We do realize that there's a lot going on. In the past, we had a couple of challenges whereby some of our students were victims. We did our best to help them out through the school support. And in preparation for the festivities, we tried to check out what can we do to ensure that they are safe. So we discussed, we came to an agreement, and this was the best way that we could go about it. Educate you guys, give you the hotline numbers so that you can contact us in case of anything. Encourage you guys to moderate, as we have spoken about, if you must drink, that is. And take care of your friends, check up on them, make sure they're doing well. So during the festivities, we hope to start the year all in good health and in good shape as well. And I am truly humbled by the work that the council has put in and the senators have put in as well to make sure that this is a success. and everyone coming together for us to collaborate and make this campaign successful. So all that's left is the students' part. It is now upon you to do your part, take care of yourself, take care of your friends, have a lovely time during the Christmas period. And I would like to wish you all a Merry Christmas. I want you to have an amazing time, but make sure you stay safe. That is very, very important. We also realize that this is happening during a pandemic. And that actually takes me back to all the effort that has been put in for this to be successful. So during this pandemic, stay safe. COVID is real for those who don't believe in it. Make sure you have your mask on, take care of your family, and let us all have an amazing festive season. So thank you so much, everyone, and God bless you all. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Don. It's actually very. I want to thank you for sharing the vision and the purpose of as to why we started this campaign. And I probably would like to invite my co-moderator for today, Maria Gitao, to just say bye.
Yeah, so thank you so much. There's this awkward thing all my lecturers have been doing this semester. So at the end of the class, they say you turn on your videos and say bye. So I'm continuing the chain. So please turn on your videos and say bye. And Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and all of those celebrations. Yeah, Rachel will be in touch about amnesty. Yeah, thank you.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night.
Bye, guys. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Videos,
bye,
guys.
people. Yeah,
Bye,
Merry
Christmas.
Lucien.
Thank you.
Thank
fruitful
you too.
2021. Hope we don't have corona.
Hopefully.
So look.
Thank you. Have a good night also. Bye.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
So I'm also
our
gonna
debaters.
leave, so.
Bye.
They're still here.
Yeah.
No.
Sifatili.
All right. Bye-bye, Jamal.
Bye. Bye, Maria. Bye. Thank you for co-moderating with me. It's been exciting.
You are most welcome. You're quite a talker, so 10 out of 10 would advise you to join debate club.
Thank you. I accept the name. Actually,
you can tell them I'm the one who recommended.
Thank you. You actually made us proud to invite some of the best speakers I know in across East Africa, even Africa, I can say. Thank you. It's been really exciting. Send our best regards to them as a council as well. If you could thank them.